You know, I like to think I'm not the sort of person who becomes bitter at the success of my friends. But when I've suffered an injustice, I feel compelled to speak out. The other day, my Daily Wire colleagues, Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles, were both called hateful by the Southern Poverty Law Center. For some reason, I was overlooked. Now again, it's not jealousy that motivates me here. It's a simple sense of fair play. I think anyone who has listened to this podcast without prejudice will agree that I am every bit as hateful to the Southern Poverty Law Center as Shapiro or Knowles. After all, I support freedom in the Constitution as much as they do. I reject intersectionality and racial victim mongering as much as they do. And I believe in God and country every bit as much as they do. I am hateful, damn it. And I deserve to be recognized for my hatefulness by the Southern Poverty Law Center just as much as any other God-loving, freedom-loving patriot. I'm not trying to take anything away from Ben and Michael, but I'm asking you today to contact the Southern Poverty Law Center through their hate report hotline at splcenter.org/report-hate and demand that I be given my fair due. As a non-racist, freedom-loving, God-fearing American, I am as hateful to the Southern Poverty Law Center as anyone alive, and I deserve that recognition. Again, that's splcenter.org/report-hate. Right today. #CallClavanHateful. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
All right, it is Mailbag Day, and yesterday was our Father's Day special. I hope you got it. I'm going to talk some more about it because I thought some really interesting issues came up. Next week, we have The Conversation. That's Tuesday, June 19th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. Ben Shapiro will be answering all your questions in that diffident, shy, bashful way he has, moderated by our lovely hostess, Elisha Krause. The Q&A will stream live on YouTube and Facebook for everyone to watch, but only Daily Wire subscribers can ask Ben the questions. To submit your questions, log into dailywire.com, head over to the conversation page to watch the live stream, type your question into the Daily Wire chat box to have it read and answered on the air. Once again, subscribe to get your questions answered by Ben on Tuesday, June 19th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, and join the conversation. While we're talking about it, I am not a survivalist, but I do live in California where any minute now we're going to break. Yesterday we had this enormous fire, and any day we're going to break off into the sea. And that is why I got my goods from Uncharted Supply Company. You know, 95% of all survival situations are resolved in 72 hours. That means the authorities get involved and you're okay. But you want the 72 survival system from Uncharted Supply Company. It contains quality tools and instructions you need to survive in a hurricane, earthquake, any emergency situation. All the tools are in a roll-top backpack that's so airtight it can even be used as a flotation device. I keep it in my home, seriously, because, I mean, these things do happen and you don't think about them until the moment they happen. This is over 35 high-quality tools organized with simple instructions. The whole kit has been vetted by experts, and it's easy to use, and it really is all, you can keep it all in one place. It really is a useful thing to have. Times are changing, and the 72 is the product every home, office, and car in America should have when an emergency arises. Be part of the solution, because the more prepared you are, the safer the world is. Right now, my listeners get $50 off at unchartedsupplyco.com when you use my code Klavan at checkout. $50 off for your survival system. Use my code Klavan at unchartedsupplyco.com for $50 off. And I know you're thinking, wow, I'm glad I'm still alive, but how do you spell Klavan?
You should check our sponsors. You'll love what you'll be saving. But you must remember, there are no E's in Klavan. There's jobs and flowers, crates and wine, and all the folks are raving. But you have to spell it right. There are no E's in Klavan. There's stamps and sheets and mattresses. There's magazines and shaving. But if you want the discount, there are no E's in Klavan. Well, you can even have them bring the meals that you are craving. There is an E in Andrew, but there are no E's in Klavan.
I just can't stop playing that. After this conversation, I really love just sitting with the guys talking about the things that men actually talk about. That conversation was more real than most of the things I hear people say about men. The reason being that most of the things you hear said about men are said by women who know nothing about the subject whatsoever, except from their point of view. And so I really thought that was great. But, there are things that only fathers know. And as we approach Father's Day, this is worth talking about. It's worth talking about more than politics, but it does relate to politics because there are things only fathers find out. I've written about this in my memoir, The Great Good Thing. I did not have a good relationship with my father, which is painful because he wasn't a bad person. He had a lot of integrity. He was good to my mother. He supported us and gave us a good life. But he and I just did not get along. And I remember when my daughter was born, my first child, my daughter Faith, bringing her home, and I was terrified that I wouldn't be a better father to her than my father was to me. And I remember the minute I brought her home, I thought, that's too low a bar. I can do that. And the reason I felt that way is not because, like I said, my father wasn't a bad guy. It was because my father was a performer, and he had that, and a comedian, which is a particular kind of performer, and he had that element of narcissism that a lot of performers, a lot of artists have. And when I say narcissism, what I don't mean is he thought he was so great. What I mean is that he didn't understand that other people truly existed outside of his imagination. I remember several times he said to me that when he was on a train or traveling through somewhere and he saw other people on the street, he found it very difficult to imagine they went on living after he was gone. And I think that made it impossible for him to separate from his sons and realize that we were different people and we might want different things. And that was the thing that it just happens to be weirdly true of me, even though, like all artists, I have a very strong ego. I mean, an artist needs a strong ego because he spends a lot of time looking at himself and exploring himself and feeling that what he has to say is worthwhile, which takes a certain amount of ego. But I'm not a narcissist. I'm very much aware that other people exist. And in fact, I think that fatherhood done right is the process of shining the light so that your kids can become themselves, which sometimes can be uncomfortable. There may be things about your kids that God made them that you are uncomfortable with. There may be things that they think intellectually. Maybe they'll come back later on to things you like, but they may distance themselves from ideas that you hold very dear. But as long as your children are honest and steadfast and true in the world and faithful to, and have integrity and faithful to good values, they are going to be different people, and your job is to let them become that and lead them to themselves. I mean, that is your job as a dad. And I think that act of letting go of yourself, of not making it about yourself, of not making your kids imitate you, and yet being yourself so that they can see what that's like. I liken, it's kind of a corny metaphor, but it's a good one, that a mother is kind of, if a child is like a plant, a mother is like the earth that feeds them, nurtures them. They come out of her. But a father is like the sun in that they grow toward him and they can see by who he is, what they are supposed to be like. That's especially important for sons, but obviously important for daughters as well, so they know what a good man looks like. And I think I used to say to my wife, it's not enough for us to do right. We have to love doing right. We have to be joyful in the right, so they don't think like, well, I have to do these things because mom and dad want me to. No, I wanted them to say this is the joyful way of life, because it is. And this thing about letting yourself go, letting other people become themselves. It works in friendship. It works in being a husband as well. It's part of the whole. It's part of the whole thing. It feeds into the love of country, which is putting the country before your personal welfare or the things you like. If Barack Obama does something right, you may dislike Barack Obama. I mean, that never was a problem. But if he does something right, you say, okay, he got it right. Why? Because you love the country more than you love yourself. You love the country more than you love your political party. You love the things, the principles for which your country stands, the freedom, even more than you love your country. And so, when I've seen, for instance, I didn't like Donald Trump, but when I see that he's doing a good job, I let go of it. I let go of the fact, I was wrong. Hey, that's going to happen. That happened once in 1962, I think. I was also wrong. It doesn't matter to me. I'd so much rather be wrong about Donald Trump and have my country thrive, so much rather than be right about Donald Trump and say, see, he did destroy things, just like I thought he was. On the show yesterday, we had a question. I don't think, well, I got to answer it a little bit, but I didn't get to fully answer, put in my thing. The conversation just kind of went on its way. Somebody asked, why is God a father in the Bible? And of course, God is not gendered the way we are gendered, but we think of him as a father, and we have the father and his son. And why is that? And one of the reasons I think it is because, like fathers, God makes us, but we are not part of him. We're not deists. We believe that this is creation. This is something God made. You're always sort of part of your mother. You came out of your mother. You're always connected to her in some essential way. But a father is really leading you to yourself so that you can be free. And God is doing the same thing. And he does it in this invisible manner. One of the things about being a father is you're not looking to be thanked. You're not looking, obviously you want to be appreciated, but you understand that when it rains and your kids don't get wet, they don't look around and say, Dad, that's that dad. I like him. He put a roof over my head. You understand that that's not what's happening. On a kind of a side note, a lot of times it's hard for people to define the good. I write about this in my novel, Werewolf Cop, where one of the guys says, bad things are active. Rape, murder, killing, bad things. But when you think about good things, you often think about people who are stopping bad things. So you think about the doctor who heals diseases. You think about the cop who stops crime. You think about the fireman who puts out a fire. It's almost as if that evil is essential and good is contingent. And it only looks that way because being itself is good. Because the life itself is good. The creation of God itself is good. So it's really the evil that's contingent. The evil is contingent on life, and the people who are doing good to stop the evil are, in fact, in support of life. It is the being that is good, and that's God's invisible goodness. And God operates, Aristotle said this is God. People talk about God as the prime mover, the mover who is not moved. And people think of that as him pushing the rock uphill or, turning the machinery. But in fact, he operates by drawing us invisibly to himself, and that is what makes us move, his love. So here's the thing. People look for fathers in the world, and especially if they didn't have a father, they look for other fathers. And I had a mentor, a shrink who saved my life, and he was a mentor to me, the only mentor I've ever had. But politicians are not your father. The president is not your father. The president is much more like a boss. He's doing something. He's not your dad. And I've been watching the left over these days of this summit with Kim Jong-un, the summit in the G7 summit in Canada, and the rage that they're expressing, a rage at a time of prosperity, a time of more freedom than we had under Obama, a time of finding our way back to constitutional living and constitutional law, a time when ISIS has been destroyed. And the rage they're expressing it's not political anymore. It is psychological, and it is a rage that Trump is not acting the role of their father because they think the government is their dad. And that is the whole thing. If you have a king, maybe then, but in our way of government, this freedom-oriented way of government, the president is just the CEO. He's just running the company, and he may not be. People pick on me that I talk about how rude he is or all his personal flaws, but that's because I want to remind you, he's there to do a job. He's there to do a job. We are here to talk about whether the job is being done well or not. And we're talking about it over time. We're talking about, is he doing it well over time? Not how is he doing at every single moment? This rage that is coming out of Hollywood, that is coming out of the news media, this absolute, it's not, like I said, it's not political. When you say I disagree with this man, I never went after Obama like this. I remember people attacking me on the right because I wouldn't say that Obama was evil. I thought, if you think Obama is evil, you do not know what evil looks like. We are so spoiled in America that even when we have a bad president, and Obama is the worst president of my lifetime, he's still not evil. He's just wrong. He's just mistaken. He's got all kinds of flaws, but the thing that got me about, Robert De Niro, we saw him spewing, curses. He went to Canada and he's apologizing to Canada for our president. And it would be amazing if John McCain weren't doing the same thing. But just listen to De Niro.
I just want to make a note of apology for the idiotic behavior of my president. It's a disgrace. And I apologize to Justin Trudeau and the other people at the G7. It's disgusting.
He's apologizing on behalf of rage-filled, twisted, irrelevant people, because that's who he represents at this point. People who are psychologically disjointed because Donald Trump will not play dad, but will simply do the job that he was hired to do. And listen, I prefer Donald Trump, had a better character as a person, but he is doing a really, really good job. By the way, his response to De Niro, absolutely hilarious. He tweeted out, Robert De Niro, a very low IQ individual, you gotta love him, has received too many shots to the head by real boxers in movies. I watched him last night and truly believe he may be punch drunk. I guess he doesn't realize the economy is the best it's ever been, with employment being at an all-time high and many companies pouring back into our country. Wake up, Punchy. I think I may have that put up on a plaque over the wall. Wake up, country. Wake up, Punchy. But all this, inability to see what's happening is this inability to put yourself aside, that you're not being fathered. Dad is not in the house, but a guy is doing a job for your country. Put that aside and celebrate it. And the news media, of course, all week long I've been busting our guys' chops, making them put these montages together, but I don't want to go through every news guy. Here is the absurd reactions. Again, I want to say, and I was really happy that a lot of smart commentators like Byron York and people like that said the same thing I said yesterday, is we don't know how this is going to work out, but he tried something new, and we know what was happening was leading in a slow, steady way to complete nuclear armament of North Korea. We know that. So we don't know if this change of pace, if this new Trumpian way of doing things is going to work. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, we can discuss why it didn't work. But we don't have to hate on him now when we have no answers yet. So here's just a quick montage of our lovely news media reacting.
I'm wondering here, did you need to have this summit in order to get what these two people got, this short little letter?
A lot of the reason why we were on the brink of nuclear war last year, part of it, to be sure, was because of the North Korean nuclear tests and their missile tests, but also because of the reckless and irresponsible rhetoric from Donald Trump, ratcheting up the tensions. And so now this is kind of the arsonist getting credit for putting out the fire. But what's striking to me about the summit is how little Donald Trump got in return for legitimating Kim Jong-un on the world stage.
He's coming out like a kiss butt. It's outrageous. It's outrageous the way he talks. This guy's a killer.
I want to bring it back to the menu for a second, not just because I'm hungry, but because typically the White House releases these kinds of details after, for example, the French president comes to the White House or another head of state comes for a state visit. So by releasing the details of the menu, this is again legitimizing Kim Jong-un.
They're talking about nuclear weapons and she's criticizing the menu. She's talking about what's on the menu. Listen, here's the thing about Donald Trump. I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it more another day. Donald Trump is in motion. He's always, I can't remember if I said this yesterday, but you remember when Barack Obama said, I don't support gay marriage, and the left didn't say a word. Why? Because they knew he was lying. They knew he wasn't telling the truth. So they didn't care whether he said, I don't support. They knew it was political. When Trump says Kim Jong-un is a good person, he's not saying Kim Jong-un is a good person. He's saying, hey, fatty, I'm going to flatter you up, fat man, and then get rid of your nukes or we'll blow you to kingdom come. That's what he's doing. He's in a process all the time. And so when you're judging Trump, because he acts like this, and I can say good things and bad things about it, but things are going so well. Here's the thing. The general picture is good. Why is that important? Because William James, great philosopher, William James, he was the brother of Henry James, one of my absolute favorite novelists. William James said, wisdom is largely a matter of knowing what to overlook. And with Trump, you got to overlook a lot. You do. You have to. That's not giving him a pass for things. That's simply saying, this is the guy he is. This is what he's doing. And overall, things are going well. So let's overlook some things. That is not a terrible, terrible thing to say, and it's not compromising, certainly not compromising my values, which are very practical. I love my country. I love my country more than being right. I love my country more than picking on people. I love my country more than party. I love my country because it represents a kind of freedom that never existed on earth before my country existed, and I hope it continues to do that, and Trump is helping that, and that seems to me to be what matters. But, however, I have to say this, there are some ways that Trump is like a father. There are some ways that Trump is like a father. if you take the kind of dysfunctional father who is still gives guys something that they can hang on to, the guy who's maybe drinks too much, maybe cheats on mom, but he's a terrible, terrible guy. But every now and again, he does something where you go like, yes, that is something a man should do. First of all, I've been concerned. I am really happy with the things Trump dislikes. And I've said this all week. I'm happy with the things Trump dislikes. I'm happy that he dislikes a global world that is not keyed into American values. I'm happy that he understands that national borders mean something, that national might means something, especially for America, which is going to be taxed with controlling this global world, this world that is inevitably becoming global. But I worry that he doesn't have a plan. When he talked the other day about how the real estate in North Korea was great, I thought that's Trump. Trump thinks, black people are going to love me because they're going to have jobs. He thinks, why would you build nuclear weapons when you could build a condo on the beach and make a lot of money? That is Donald Trump to me. That is the best thing about him. And it really is a good thing about him that he's a practical guy. He's not giving the Gettysburg Address. He's not re-expressing the founding ideals. He's talking about like practical knowledge and practical wisdom and capitalist wisdom above all. The thing is, though, he has been saying the same thing for a long time. CNN Wolf Blitzer played a cut of an interview with him about North Korea from 1999, so it's almost 20 years ago now. And he's saying the same thing then he's saying now. Listen to this.
North Korea is totally out of control. And would you rather have a very, very serious chat with them now? And if necessary, you might have to do something fairly drastic. Or would you rather have to go after them in 5 years when they have more nuclear warheads and missiles than we do?
What if the North Koreans don't play ball, develop a nuclear capability, go forward with their missile development? Does the United States act unilaterally?
Excuse me. If spoken to correctly, they will play ball. Look on another front what happened recently where Clinton has asked our so-called trade partners to come so we can renegotiate some fairness into trade, right? They don't show up. They say we're not coming. Why would Germany show up? Why would France show up? Why would Japan show up? They've been ripping us off for years, so why would they come here? It's ridiculous.
So he's saying the same thing then that he's saying now, and he's talking about the way he talks, right? So remember, he brought Kim Jong-un to this negotiation by calling him Little Rocket Man, threatening, saying, my button is bigger than your button. Hannity talks to him about this, and it's really wonderful. This is kind of dad, because he's very honest about the fact that he's not very honest. So this is cut number 11.
A lot of people, critics, quickly saying, when you said Little Rocket Man, or Fire and Fury, or, when he said, oh, I've got a red button on my desk, he said, well, mine's bigger and it works better than yours. How did it evolve from that to this? Because he did say at the very beginning, we're going to basically start over, but that has been building behind the scenes.
Well, I think without the rhetoric, we wouldn't have been here. I really believe that. We did sanctions and all of the things that you would do, but I think without the rhetoric, other administrations, I don't want to get specific on that, but they had a policy of silence. If they said something very bad and very threatening and horrible, just don't answer. That's not the answer. That's not what you have to do. So I think the rhetoric, I hated to do it. Sometimes I felt foolish doing it, but we had no choice.
Yeah, as a guy who has, in my far youth, was in a lot of fistfights, a lot of times you get out of fistfights, you avoid fistfights by just being as mean and nasty and loud as you can possibly be. And so that's a perfectly good ploy, and I love the fact that he admits it. I also love that he admitted this, where he talked about, he says, look, I'm trying this, it might not work. This is cut number 7.
I think he's going to do these things. I may be wrong. I mean, I may stand before you in 6 months and say, hey, I was wrong. I don't know that I'll ever admit that, but I'll find some kind of an excuse.
That's very dad. See, that's very manly, very, yeah, I'll never admit I'm wrong. It's not going to happen, but at least I'll admit that I'll never admit I'm wrong. Listen to Joy Behar, the voice of screechy, angry, haggy, miserable feminism. Listen to her react to that.
Donald Trump said, if I'm wrong, I will admit it. Yeah, right, when pigs fly.
Donald Trump is a vulgar, demented pig demon.
That's what they can't. He's a big demon. But Joy Behar, she didn't even listen to what he said. She said he'll never admit he's wrong. He said that. He admitted it, but she can't hear it. Anyway, I just think that Trump so far is doing a terrific job. He really is. And we're just going to have to live with the fact that he's not daddy. He's the president of the United States. Listen, if you haven't already found this out, The Andrew Klavan Show is now available on Amazon Alexa and the Google Home device. If you use one of these virtual assistants, you can get my podcast with a simple voice command. Once you enable the skill on Alexa or ask Google to talk to the show. For more information, check out our pinned tweets on Facebook and Twitter. The mailbag is coming up, which you can listen to, and hopefully I'll hit some of your problems and solve them all. But if you want your specific problem solved, you got to subscribe. It allows you $10 a month. Is that so much to ask for solving all your problems? Come on. All right, come on over to thedailywire.com. Mailbag right away.